Okay, regardless of where I end up ranking this console, you gotta admit, this has by far the best startup intro out of all the Nintendo consoles. But we'll get on to that later, because for now, we are looking at every single Nintendo home console and ranking them from worst to best. And yes, these are specifically the home consoles. Maybe I'll get to the handhelds at a later date. But for the sake of this video, I am going to include the Switch. Even though it is a hybrid of sorts, it still serves Nintendo's home console role now that it is out. And basically, I'm ranking these based off if I add every single game that was made specifically for the console. Every other aspect, including innovations, new features, virtual console support, and backwards compatibility, will all be taken into account, but I'm not going to assume that I have every single backwards compatible game and every single eShop game. Because, I don't know, that would kind of be unfair to stuff like the Gamecube, since the Wii can play all Gamecube games, making the Gamecube then pretty irrelevant in the ranking. So yeah, it doesn't seem right to do that. Yeah, I don't know, maybe this is the wrong approach. Who even knows how to rank these things anyways? I clearly don't, so let's start it off and go from there. And oh yeah, if you want to see more ranking videos like this one, then check out my ranking playlist in the description, as I've already ranked a lot of different game series. And hit subscribe if you want to see my future rankings. Alrighty, so why don't we start off this ranking then? So today we are ranking all 7 of Nintendo's home consoles, and honestly, this was kind of a hard thing to rank just because of how weird of a ranking this is. But the one placement that was pretty obvious for me was the last place, which is the NES. This console is known for saving the entire home console industry as a whole, and it was the birthplace of so many great game series that are staples nowadays. It started Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Megaman, and Castlevania, just to name a few. And this console actually had a lot of great classic 2D platformers as well. Most notably the Mario games, and of course the Megaman series, which had 6 total Megaman games on this one console. Okay, geez, that's a bit much, but still, there was actually so many games on the system. Same with RPGs too, like the whole Final Fantasy series started here. So with all that going for it, why is it in last place? Well, come on, it's literally the first big video game home console, so it's really dated by today's standards. Video games have come a long way since then, making everything about this console seem very experimental, which it was. No one really knew how to make great video games back then, causing a lot of, well, trash games that came out on this console. The games were really hit or miss. Plus the controllers are pretty well bricks with no ergonomics, making it the least comfortable controller. Obviously take all these negatives with a grain of salt because this stuff was all revolutionary back in the day and there are still a lot of hidden gems on the console. But when compared to everything else and how video games evolved since then, this is the clear last place. And that was the NES, a great console, but with a lot of flaws. So the next logical step for Nintendo in the video game console making process was to make the Super version of the NES. Next here is the Super NES, and what a fitting name that it was, because this is literally the NES with a lot of the flaws fixed. The games on this console as a whole were just a lot more playable, and I'd say had some of the best 2D games ever on the system. Just look at the Donkey Kong Country series, 3 amazing platformers on one system. Even just the controls in general were a lot better. Some games obviously had worse controls than others, but nothing was unplayable or horrible, and that can't be said for the NES games. I mean, just look at the controller too, it's got roundness. Whoa, now that's revolutionary. But seriously though, it was a lot more comfortable to play. And look at all the new buttons this time, 2 more face buttons and 2 new triggers. This allowed for much more high input games to be made, such as all the fighting games on the console. And then a lot of the franchises they started on the NES, game developers took those games and created the better version of them in almost every way. Super Mario World, A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, Kirby Superstar, and Mega Man X. And then the console also introduced this new Mode 7 feature, which basically allowed the backgrounds of the games to be altered by rotating or scaling them. And this was most notably used in racing games to give the illusion of a 3D space. This console had some pretty neat stuff back then. Plus, it also gave us Earthbound, one of my favorite games ever that is super underrated. So that's just something on its own. All in all, this SNES was a great improvement from consoles that we've seen before. Okay, so this console actually kills me to put this low on the list because I love this thing, but when looking at these consoles in a purely objective manner, the N64 has to go at the number 5 spot. This console had so many great 3D platformers in a collectathon style that still holds up today. And this is a style that we really don't see anymore, to be honest. Games like Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie. While this console's library wasn't all that big this time, what really made up for it was the quality and just new ideas present in a lot of the games. Mario 64 revolutionized Mario games. Ocarina of Time beautifully transitioned Zelda into a brand new style. And this was the start of Super Smash Bros., which was a new concept for a fighting game. Plus, do I even need to mention the games made by Rare on this system? This developer just carried the system, I swear. Banjo-Kazooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Diddy Kong Racing, and GoldenEye, of course. Literally every single different video game genre that they touched, they created the new standard for that genre, and it was built up upon afterwards. And this all started on the N64. As for the flaws of this thing though, people like to complain about the controller, but I don't know, I always liked it. People poke fun at these 3 grips over here, but come on guys, they're meant for 2 different styles of games. Does it look stupid? Yes, but does it function as intended? Also yes. The one thing I'll give you is that the main control stick is uncomfortable to use and can break easily. And the other thing with this console is that yes, there were a lot of great 3D games, but also a lot of pretty bad ones. These ones really didn't age as well as the old 2D games just because no one knew how to make 3D games back then, so the controls and level design of some of these games weren't the best. Plus the visuals haven't aged as well as the old 2D SNES games, like ugh. Look at the fog on this one. Still though, I think when the games got it right on the N64, it surpassed the greatest games that the SNES had to offer. Even if these types of games were less frequent on the console, the innovations on this thing are what put it slightly above the SNES. So now we're getting into the more modern era of Nintendo consoles. An era where graphics were a lot better, and each of the consoles, most of the time, tried to add a new innovation or gimmick in how you played these games. So the console we're talking about now is the Wii U. Yeah, the name aside, it actually had a lot of great things going for it. First of all, every Wii controller and game were all compatible with the system. This gave everyone more than enough controllers and ways to play with it. And the Virtual Console Shop had a huge library this time. A lot of games from multiple different Nintendo home and handheld consoles were all available on the shop. And of course, the new big thing this time was the gamepad. For what it was actually pretty cool. You can free up your TV space, have your inventory here, or even create building games where you can just tap to place blocks, like the popular Super Mario Maker. Plus, there was also really neat uses for it, mostly seen in Nintendo Land. Nothing really groundbreaking, however, but it's still cool. So with all those good things that it has, why is it so low, even below the Wii? Well, the big disadvantage for me was something that seems obvious, really. It's the games. Or lack thereof, I should say. In comparison to their competition and their previous consoles even, there was not much to play. And even the games that it did have weren't that groundbreaking most of the time. Sure, there were solid entries in the series like Mario 3D World, but when compared to the 2 groundbreaking Galaxy games on the console before, it doesn't hold up. And not to mention that it literally didn't have a new Zelda game on the system until the very day that the Switch launched, in which you can get that Zelda game on Switch. And there wasn't even a Metroid, Kirby, or Animal Crossing game. And the third-party support was even worse. There were barely any games from other developers, and most third-party games that came out were simply just ports of older games. This made the Wii U just feel very behind in the generation. But overall, the Wii U did have a lot of potential and great features even, but the lack of games is what held it back for me. And moving right along from the Wii U and on to the next console here, but oh boy, let's not get too ahead of ourselves now, because this next console we're looking at is basically the Wii U, just without the U. The Nintendo Wii, i.e. the biggest thing since sliced bread when it came out. Just look at this thing, the controller's nothing like we've seen before. This is because this system introduced the world to motion controls, and when used right, they can actually be a lot of fun. There was a lot of great minigame collections that use this mechanic pretty well, such as WarioWare Smooth Moves and of course Wii Sports Resort. But I think the best games used it more to complement traditional controls, such as shooter games like Resident Evil 4 or Metroid Prime 3. And then some games totally screwed it up and added bad motion controls that made the game worse. But hey, it's a variety. I mean, this console notably had a ton of low-effort shovelware games on it, with a lot of developers just trying to make a quick buck off this Wii craze. But still though, there were some great games in general on the console that balanced everything out. Games like Mario Galaxy, Smash Bros. Brawl, The Return of Donkey Kong Country, 2 Zelda games, and 2 Kirby games. There was a lot of fun here, and actually a surprising amount of 2D games this time. Plus, all the Wii series games were pretty good at showing off all the different ways the Wii remote could be used. And also, this thing had like the best virtual console ever. There were so many retro games available on the Wii Shop channel. Plus, the Wii was also backwards compatible with all your Gamecube games. Well, at least some versions of the Wii that did that. All in all, the Wii was a great system to have. But now there's only 2 consoles left, and these 2 are very different systems in terms of both looks and features. We have a cube or a rectangle. Let's start with the cube. Yes, the Gamecube! This is like the no-frills kind of console. No gimmicks, no extra features, and no online. So with all that, why is this so high up on the list? Because it gets the basics down perfect. A great game library and amazing controllers. Just look at these, I don't even know why I like them so much. They just have that comfortable grip, those perfectly clickable buttons and joysticks, and great button placements. It's literally still the choice of controller for most competitive Smash Bros players, and Nintendo is still selling them to this very day. That's saying something. So what about the games on the console then? Well, there were a lot of them, and this generation I feel they really started to polish up the 3D games. Developers were really getting familiar with 3D game design. Plus this console had a great balance of first-party and third-party games. From awesome Nintendo games like Super Mario Sunshine, Wind Waker, Pikmin, and Smash Bros. Melee, to third-party classics such as Resident Evil 4, Eternal Darkness, and Beautiful Joe. Plus there were so many spin-offs in this console. It's crazy. Like, I've never seen anything like it. So many Mario Party games, so many Mario Sports games, a spin-off Kirby game, 2 amazing spin-off Pokemon games, and the greatest Mario RPG ever. Overall, I'd say this console had one of the most different and diverse libraries of games out of any other Nintendo console, and that just made it a unique experience every time you go back and play this thing. The Switch. Yeah, come on, how could I not? This one was probably obvious, but really, it's such a great console and just a great idea too. This solves a problem that plagued the gaming industry for years. Now there's no longer the issue of having to play only handheld games when on the road or going away for a trip. You can play every home console game anywhere, anytime. And because of that, I'd say this console is going to be a lot more timeless than Nintendo's other, well, let's say gimmicky consoles. While motion controls and touchscreen mechanics are great, it can alienate more hardcore gamers, and the technology isn't always perfect in their input. But this isn't an issue with the Switch. It perfectly appeals to both casual and more hardcore gamers in one console. Plus, each Joy-Con could be its own controller on its own, making it easy to take anywhere and play with friends. It's just a super versatile console. But what's a console without its games? And oh boy, does it ever have some great ones. Literally, this console has arguably, I'd say, keep in mind I said arguably, the best version of a majority of Nintendo's biggest franchises. Hey, not you, what are you doing here? There we go. Arguably the best games in the series. Honestly, if there was just Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, and Smash Ultimate, that could sell the console on its own. These are 3 amazing games right here. And on top of that, it had a lot of third-party games this time. For some people, this may even be the ideal system for these games, since only on Switch, you can play these third-party games on the go. This is something that no other competing console can offer. All in all, the Switch was a great timeless concept. It appealed to a very wide audience and had a lot of great games. Hi, how's it going? So this is the part of the video where I usually reveal what the next ranking's gonna be, but things are gonna be changing a bit from here on out. So basically what I'm doing with the channel this year is just trying to expand into new different video styles and new video series, that sort of thing. So in an attempt to unify all these different video types together, I may hint at a future video at the end of any of my videos, not just the ranking ones. Now I might make this not as explicit as I've been doing in the past. It might be a bit more ambiguous, that sort of thing. Maybe just a subtle hint in the background. I don't really know. And it might not be on every video. I just gotta see how the endings work in these type of things and if it really fits. But stay tuned, keep posted, watch for these endings because I'm trying something new here and we'll see how it goes. But that's really it from me. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.